All right, guys, thanks for your patience. We're going to get started now. We are in Terrace Room East, and we are going to be listening to a panel on marketing your local cut flowers, consumer research, and industry trends with Katie Lynd, Debra Prinzing, and Beth Mort. I'm excited to turn it over to them. This session goes until 11:15, another session 15 minutes after that, and then we'll head to lunch in the Cap Note. Bathrooms are outside down the hall, and we have water in the back. I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Thanks. There's evaluations at the end. We really appreciate you guys doing them. We really do read all of them, and they help inform our future conference offering. So thank you so much for bearing with us as we do them every time. Thanks, guys.
Hello and welcome. My name is Katie Lynd. I am with the Washington State Department of Agriculture's Regional Markets Program, and I am serving as WSDA's Cut Flower Project Coordinator. We're just going to do real brief introductions here, and then Beth and Deborah are going to introduce themselves more during their sections. I asked everybody to share what their favorite flower was because I thought it'd be a fun way to get to know us. My favorite flower are violets. They grew where I was raised in Montana, and my dog's name is also Violet. And I have Debra Printing here from SlowFlowers.com. She is a flower and floral marketing guru, and her favorite flower are the sweet peas. And then Beth Mort is also joining me. She is the owner of Snapdragon Flower Farm. She's a local flower farmer, designer, and organizer. And her favorite flower is milkweed. That's just a little bit about us. Now we want to kind of know who is in the room with us today. So just a quick show of hands. How many in the room are flower farmers? How many are growing solely flowers? Just flowers, that's the only thing you grow. Awesome. How about flowers in addition to other products? A little bit more. Who's here that's just interested and maybe would like to think about growing flowers? Awesome. And for those of you that are growing flowers, raise your hand if you've grown flowers for longer than 10 years. More than 5 years? More than 3 years? More than a year? Okay, so some pretty young starting out there. And this is a picture of Deborah Gonzalo Oida from Oida Farms in Ethel, Washington, with one of his beautiful bouquets. So I'm going to kind of set the stage with what we're going to talk about today. This is a specialty crop block grant funded project, which is a collaborative effort between WSDA Regional Markets Program and the Washington State Farm Bureau. I want to recognize David Pearson from the Washington State Farm Bureau as one of our great partners for this project. And this project is from 2017 to 2019, bringing together a range of specialty crop industry stakeholders to design and implement an integrated marketing campaign to raise the profile and awareness of Washington cut flowers. Our state is the third largest grower of cut flowers in the nation, and we really want to let consumers know and let your buyers know what sort of value they are getting from your flowers and help you sell more flowers into the marketplaces you're really interested in. The project was kind of conceived of based on kind of the movement around what's been happening with local agriculture. We know that there's been consistent growth in consumer demand for local and regional food, and there's growing demand for local flowers as well, and all the things that come along with our agricultural system. We know that effective messaging, marketing, and producing will help assist you in selling more flowers in this industry. So our project outcomes, we conducted probably about 9 months of industry and market research, and what we're going to focus on for this presentation is really the consumer portion of that. We're hoping to build consumer awareness overall on kind of the landscape and the industry of cut flowers here in Washington. And we're hoping to help producers with some business development, whether that's access to markets that are appropriate scale for producers, trainings, and doing some promotional activities and efforts that will help you get more access to your customers. And so where we're at kind of in timeline is we're wrapping up this industry research phase and about to embark on designing an integrated marketing campaign that can be something that will be something based on this research that we found, as well as talking with producers and other folks in the supply chain. And then we're going to offer some trainings on how you would implement this as well. All right. Any questions on the project? I'm pretty fluid, so if you have a question at any time, just raise your hand and jump in. We're going to have more of a conversation than actually a panel. All right, so let's see what we did with this consumer research. So we contracted with a market research firm called Blue Research to conduct a survey of consumer preferences along with focus groups gathering qualitative and quantitative data on how consumers view fresh cut flowers. So this is our objective and our methodology. We wanted to address where, when, for whom, and why, and what were some of the attitudes and perceptions around terminology focused on local. And then we use this hybrid approach, being able to get over 400 responses to the surveys and 2 really quality focus groups, of which you'll be able to see some videos from them. So I'm going to kind of set the stage, and some of this may not be news to you, but this is from the survey report of buying behavior and why consumers are buying flowers. And so primarily for others, they're buying for all of the typical holidays that you likely are aware of. But there's some interesting notes in this data here, is that folks who are buying flowers for themselves are primarily doing it for other reasons or home decor. And those are kind of our everyday flower shoppers. And I think that is a market of notice that we might be delving into a little bit more.
Yeah, when you told me that, I wanted to just jump in and share another anecdotal statistic that I find really interesting from Farm Grow Flowers, which is an online e-commerce flower business. I think it's on, isn't it?
Oh, how's that?
Oh, wow.
And Christina Stemble, who's the owner of Farm Grow Flowers, which is based in San Francisco, but they ship bouquets all over the country. They've found that over 90% of their sales are women buying for themselves or other women. And so there's that kind of perception, maybe an old throwback perception, that men are buying flowers for women, which certainly is the case at Valentine's Day and Mother's Day, maybe an anniversary, or what did you say?
When you screw up.
Yeah. But the, I deserve it, I deserve something beautiful mindset, or my BFF needs a pick-me-up, I'm going to send her flowers. That is an untapped opportunity for everyday flowers.
Definitely. And that ties in really nicely with purchase location. So again, probably no surprises here, but grocery stores being the #1 place where folks are getting their flowers. They can go there, they can pick up the milk, the bread, the eggs, the other things that they need. And if that grocery store is a floral department, that may be a place where they're specifically going to for one of these reasons, or it might just be because the flowers were there. I think it's also important to not disregard, that florists and farmers markets combined are a pretty good percentage here too. Mm-hmm. And farmers markets tend to have a lot of the same conveniences that grocery stores do, especially our farmers markets here in Washington. Wide variety of products, wide variety of experiences, and I'll grab that bouquet on my way out.
Can I add one more thing, Katie?
Please do. Conversation.
Not to be discouraged, but I'm a contributor to Super Floral magazine, which goes to grocery store floral. And through that experience, I've learned that it's conventionally accepted that 50% of all flowers purchased in the U.S. are purchased at the grocery store level. So it's like, okay, that wave has already washed along, it's already washed over all of us. We have to just figure out how to work with that now and accept that that's generally how consumers are, maybe that's their only interface with flowers.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh. I'm surprised that farmers market is third, and maybe it's just, coming from the Seattle area where it's just so ridiculous.
Is that from the consumer
This is
survey?
This is from the survey, and the survey was primarily skewed fairly heavily towards western part of the state. We did have responses from across the whole state, but I'd say upwards of about 60 to 70% of our responses stayed west of the Cascades for the survey. So yeah, Melissa, that's a good point. I think also folks who are buying for an occasion and wanting to have it be really special, this is something we heard in the focus groups, that a florist was kind of their first entry point before a farmer's market, because they felt that the florist would know the right type of flowers to put together, the right type of design.
It might also relate to seasonal, because we don't have a lot of year-round farmers markets in Washington.
And not many, if all, flowers
Yeah.
year-round too.
And I find flowers coming from a farmer's
we're going to be talking about some of that. Yeah, for sure. Laura?
I also just wanted to, just because in this community here at Tilth, we tend to always be thinking already kind of about a segment of the market that's already somewhat oriented to local or farmers markets. Just to clarify that this research was intentionally broad-line based consumer research. So we did not segment or select participants in the survey that were maybe already somewhat predisposed
Right.
to be a core or a local shopper. So this is sort of at the request of some of the other flower farmers who advised the project to really just get baseline, general consumer, how they think about flowers, and maybe Washington grown flowers too.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Laura. I should have said that at the onset. Yeah, there was no kind of, market segmentation deep dives in here, but that could be a potential for further iterations. So putting these kind of together with location, this was a ranking of importance with obviously convenience and cost rising to the top there. So some potential, for farmers markets really falling in there as both being convenient and having a decent price point for folks. What I think was really interesting to our team in looking at this is that where locally grown falls in this spectrum. And that it's important to note that when we talked specifically with the focus groups, because that was our one-on-one iteration, there was an assumption that if they were purchasing flowers, be it at the supermarket or wherever, they were already assuming they were locally grown. They weren't asking that question. It wasn't even kind of coming into play. And so that can kind of maybe a reason why locally grown isn't top of mind for folks. They're just like, oh, of course they're grown from here, without any understanding of seasonality and our climate and those sorts of things. And we'll get to that with some of the videos. And I think it's also really important that quality and variety are not to be overlooked. So there's some flower farms that are really rock it, but you have like one crop and you know it does well. But you might want to think about, your shoulder seasons or what other varieties you can use to supplement, or working with other farms to do that. And then quality, we keep coming back to quality. And this one I liked a lot. This is about what drives the choice of this. So color, people are very visually oriented. In the direct marketing strategy session yesterday, we were talking about how you can make your market booth, really vibrant and abundant. And the same thing goes for flowers, is really wanting things to pop. Folks are looking for particular types of flowers. They may know their partner really likes, we had a participant in the focus group, Gerber daisies. He knows his wife loves Gerber daisies, so he'll go out of his way to find the perfect daisy for her. Cost, again, a big thing in there, and how long the flowers will last. And so this kind of got couched in this terminology around longevity. And to kind of break it down a little bit more, that's about freshness and quality. And so much of that is how you tell your farm's story, because when we were seeing the consumer interest in this longevity, and we'll talk a little bit more, Deborah's gonna talk a little bit more about this, is farm fresh flowers are just that. They're fresh from the farm. And there's a disconnect between people possibly in like the grocery retail environment, not knowing how long those flowers have sat on the shelf. And so they come in with an expectation that if I'm buying a bouquet, it's going to last so many days. And as a producer, there's an opportunity there to educate your customer about why your flowers are the freshest, do have longevity, and do have a good quality. So we're gonna show some videos. And I'm not quite sure where the audio is gonna come from. So you guys kind of be our guide a little bit. We have a backup strategy, but thankfully the Davenport wonderful staff got us hooked up. And so this was a pretty enlightening moment where we were talking about, again, as I mentioned, most participants not admitting that they don't know where their flowers come from. And it may be a little bit muffled because it was a single camera or a single microphone in the room.
This is your focus group?
Yes, this is one of the focus groups.
This way, how many of you know where the flowers are grown that you buy?
No idea.
Show of hands.
Do not know.
Do not know, maybe unsure what it
Valley,
is.
usually. I think I've heard that a couple times.
Skagit
Yeah.
Valley?
Yeah.
Okay, so I heard
Well-
not sure, not sure, not sure, not sure.
Sometimes
maybe
at the flower
sometimes.
markets, when you talk to the people and ask, where their farms are or whatever.
Okay, so sometimes-
Skagit Valley is a term that I've heard
You've
used a
heard
couple times. Yeah.
Skagit Valley
Or when I
sometimes.
go to Pike Place Market, I have that association already. that it's locally based usually.
What about you?
I say market local, other than that, I have no idea.
Yeah, pretty telling, right? And then this one, so then we started talking with folks about, okay, without giving them any education or any prompts, like what would you think a local flower should be? And these are some of the things they said. Flowers that originate in farms located near where they are being sold. So again, no prompts from us, no education. What does local mean to you? Sold by the farmer or at the farmer's market. Supporting individuals that live in their area and the local community. And that piece about quality, right? Cut recently, last longer, and more fragrant. And then not to underestimate the packaging. And so let's hear what these folks said.
I would expect them to last longer because they haven't gone as far.
The majority of the money is going to the person that actually grew them and harvested them. Grown locally, there's going to be less carbon footprint.
Would you rather buy a banana that's like, 2 days from being picked or like 6 days from being picked? It's all about just like freshness. It's going to be like, look, texture, smell. It's going to just, I would assume if it's local.
I want it, especially if I'm buying it for someone, like, I want them to know, like, hey, this is different. I didn't just go to Safeway.
So that different, unique, yeah.
I'm really shocked by it because my feedback with growing flowers, I had to really work with the grocery stores and then even people at the farmer's market, they expect that my flowers are not going to last as long because they're local, because they're like garden flowers. And I really, they last a fresher. I grow varieties that are going to last a long. I'm bringing a cooler overnight. Like I'm doing all the things that without chemicals, that the grocery store. Anyway,
I've experienced that as well. I've experienced exactly what you're saying. It's an odd switch around from what you would expect, and I think that's a good point. I hadn't even been considering that as we've been talking prior to this, but that there's this other educational piece where, yeah, people assume that you're growing something that's flippant and has no strength or pizzazz. It's just like, oh, you're going to bring this in, it's going to die in 2 days, And on the converse side of that too, I've also experienced something where longevity has become, or vase life has become this catch-all for that people expect all flowers to do the exact same. And, as you're picking out flower varieties that will last longer and do have a longer vase life, we don't see dahlias typically in our Safeway bouquets because they don't last very long. And so being able to expand the nuances of what that means for the everyday consumer, where a florist maybe already knows all of those things, so if you're doing direct to consumer, there's all these variables when you're talking to any given person at any time. So I just second that I've experienced that for sure.
And that, when you're talking to grocery stores and stuff and you're saying local, so they're assuming, yeah, it's coming out of your garden. And based on their own experience, when they're out cutting in the heat of the day and cutting a flower and bringing it inside and it died, it wilts overnight. So
yeah, there's a lot of pieces for sure.
So there's this great opportunity to be promoting local. And so this is what our focus group had to say when we asked them how they would kind of sell the local brand. If you were to get a bouquet of flowers and you're bringing it to a dinner party, you got it at the market, you got it direct from your farmer florist. And we thought this was pretty interesting.
You're going to be buying flowers for this dinner party. Why don't you buy them locally so you can help support our local community, where they'll keep the revenue in our area, where they will regenerate it. And also that you can share with all the other guests at the dinner party that you got these flowers locally, hopefully generating some future revenue for them.
So they're already starting to become our marketers.
The word locally grown is a brand that could be used. I know it's not specific to a farm, but a number of farms could use that local brand. And the sleeve that you put your flowers in could very well have kind of a fake floral edge and it'd say local in the center of it, which would give it that feel that it is local. It doesn't have one company's brand name, but you know that it's local. And then Chelan, everyone's selling wine, and they're all the Chelan Valley wineries. And they each have their own brand, but they promote it as a group, and they have a pamphlet that goes out for that.
Yeah, so there's lots of cool tie-ins with things other industries are doing that could be really applicable to farms. Another thing, just a little side note going back to the freshness and quality that Deborah and I are talking about was like roast date for coffees. Like you have a pick date for your flowers, and like there could be something innovative there about telling that story about flower was picked and then it went along its journey. So these focus group participants are really seeing, coming around to see how promoting local might catch their eye. But promotion is nothing without the education. And this was just a really nice highlight to end on.
Like first educate people, tell them why they should buy local. Everything that we came up with today totally makes sense. But before I walked into here, I wasn't like, oh, I love like local flowers and all this stuff. But I'm probably gonna look next time I go to the store now that I'm slightly more educated.
Yes. That's the wins we hope for.
We have 14 new committed consumers.
Ta-da! They didn't know what they were getting into. They just came for the snacks. So then Blue Research kind of wrapped up, took both this quantitative and qualitative data and presented us with their findings and recommendations. And these were kind of the key points here. So ensuring a strong presence and availability in preferred purchasing locations. So again, grocery racing to the top, but other convenient locations. So for direct marketing farms, that may be your farmer's market, that may be your florist that's located in an area that has other amenities near it. Aggressively on price was something they also recommended. And this idea of, again, longevity. And what does that really mean? And so 3 and 4 consumers are talking about this longevity tag, but for direct marketing farms, that may be more explaining your practices, your farm story, and talking about the freshness when you're cutting, how you're getting it to market, and the varieties that you're using as well. And then as a portion of our project, kind of coming up next, is launching a branded campaign to educate consumers and drive that preference. And that will be something that we're going to continue to work on with this project and with the input from really robust stakeholders, any of you here. And maximizing the effectiveness of the campaign, tell your story. So I'm sure you've heard this about 100 times at this conference, but your farm is unique, your farm is yours, and your flowers are unique and yours. And even though you may be growing the same dahlias, variety of dahlias that your neighbor does, maybe you have them early season or late season, just finding those little ways to kind of differentiate yourself in that market. And so what does this mean for you? I'm gonna have Deborah come up or I think we kind of went through most of this,
Yeah.
but so what market channels may be worth the most effort? And we just kind of want to open us to the group and from what you kind of heard and see, what you might think market channels you might be pursuing. Anyone want to share? Go for it.
I personally am going for online, where everything is seamless and it's just delivered to your door.
Okay.
For me, I think being both a farmer and a florist, there's like plenty of work. I don't need to sit at a farmer's market like twice a week. I think I couldn't do it if I tried to do that. And so like my online store is set up so that you literally like click a button, you check out like anyone else would check out on Amazon or whatever. You tell me where to put your flowers if you're not home, and it happens without any, any real other input besides what you would do for any other online order.
So Carolyn, that's for B2C, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, I think with that plus like wedding work, I think that's one of the more, direct marketing to people who are buying flowers regularly, but also like getting your name out of like, hey, I also do events, or I do special occasions, or if you need something that's not a subscription or a regular delivery, like I can do that too. For me, that was kind of my strategy because I'm not just farming.
That's great. And that makes it unique too. Yeah.
I just have a question for the lady that just was speaking.
Yeah.
So, do you deliver all the flowers, and is there like a certain range, like you only deliver within so many miles, or?
Yeah, I'm in Seattle, so pretty much anybody in Seattle, like I'll deliver to, and that's, a general, like, I don't know, I haven't had anyone in like Issaquah or, super far south wanting flowers.
This panel is super helpful.
Is anybody doing B2B, like farmer to wholesaler or farmer to to florists, selling at a wholesale price versus a retail price? How are you doing that?
I'm doing that a little bit to a couple small local florists in town. It's kind of trickling. It's very slow, but it's been steady and reliable in that regard. I feel like I'm building those relationships and kind of getting a better understanding of what it is they're really looking for and the trends or whatever, you know, because I plant stuff long before I know what is really going to be hot.
But that goes to the second point of knowing your customer. So you're
Exactly.
developing those relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, and with knowing your customer, I think you both hit on a couple of different ones. There's the bridal and the wedding industry. There's florists. They're selling to a grocer. They're selling direct to your farmers. So the values that they hold are going to probably be a little bit different in each of those categories. And so how do you, again, show value with your product to each of those different customers? And then attributes, always bringing it back to the farm story. All right, you ready? Are you ready?
Yeah,
Beth?
I hope
Yeah.
so. We'll see.
So what we wanted to do is contextualize a lot of this work and have Beth tell her story about Snapdragon Flower Farm.
Yeah. So it's 10:46. I like to start with time because I'm a terrible timekeeper. Okay, and I'll use that. I'm also not great at technology, so I'm gonna try to go through this a little quick. So I'm just gonna start with my little tiny farm. So I consider it kind of a micro farm. My husband and I rent our house and lease our land from our good friends and landlords, Heron Pond Farms, and they have about a 20-acre parcel up in the nosebleeds of the South Hill, just off of the Palouse Highway. So we are at the very north end, and as you can see right against the road there, and they're at the very south end of the property. And I lease up to about an acre of land right now, and could go more if I could, but right now I can barely manage a quarter of an acre. So I cram as many flowers as I can in that space. I just do it as intensively as I can and always have the goal of getting really good at succession planting. I'll be going into my third year, so we've only been on this property since 2017, like March of 2017. And so you can see in that bottom photo, we were just tilling up pasture land, essentially. And so it was a pretty fast-paced, raw, figure it out as fast as you can scenario. Luckily, I had all of my flower starts already because I figured we didn't know we'd be able to move into this place until January of that year, and so I had everything ready to go, and I just figured, I'm going to put it somewhere. I'll figure it out, and luckily this thing opened up. So previously, I had worked for the Department of Ecology. And knew that wasn't my best place in the world, so I had been stalking my local vegetable farmers for a long time to get as much information about how they grow and what they grow and all of their processes. And I kind of followed Elliott Coleman and Market Gardner and kind of took those farming methods to heart, and that's kind of how I wanted to do it. And I did a little tiny vegetable CSA while I was still working full-time at Ecology, just to see if I could hack it, because I know it's, as much work as you can imagine plus more. And so by doing that, I did get some growing methods I really liked, and I met a lot of vegetable farmers who are my ultimate resource all the time, and I can't say enough about all of the local growers I have in my community. So I just kept coming back to flowers and thinking this is what I wanted to grow, to add to our community of locally grown products. So let's see, did I bring my, yeah, okay, so that's kind of the short story of how I got there. And I have the opportunity, like I said, to grow a lot more, but I started with just this little block up here on the side, and then this is like a little fenced garden area. So the first year I started with that, and I kind of tilled that area to the east, or the area to the west there, but I just wasn't really ready. So it was prepped the first year, but I didn't really plant it until the second year. And you can see I have just one high tunnel at this point. And last year I had my dahlias in there and did have dahlias until November. So the season extension was a real thing. And this year I had all my anemone and ranunculus in there. And so I really had a good early bump on my available flowers. So just again, I pull from all the seasons that I can, and I've got bulbs in, and I do bulbs early, and I try to get as much as I can from all my seasons up until dahlias. And the hardest part for me is I don't want to just grow one thing. I want to grow as many things as I can. I'm a plant nerd first. My background is in plant nerdery, and so that's what I'm constantly trying to honor, and that's, why, I got into this because I believe that people should be growing anything that they can. When I quit ecology, I started a permaculture design business so that I could try to make some money, convince my husband that I could work on my own while I was trying to figure out how I was going to jump this flower farm thing. And so I want to sell flowers. I want to do well, but my success isn't measured only by the dollar bill. That's just, and I'm lucky my husband is a full-time arborist, which I highly recommend if you're growing flowers, because what happens even if you've got an arborist friend, this is a total right turn, but find yourself arborists, because all those beautiful branches, and especially for me, I'm renting, so I want to put in all these perennial plants, right? I want to put in all these branches that I want, all these flowering perennial things, but I'm just not sure how long I'm going to be there. So if you have an arborist, you will get beautiful flowering dogwood right when they're blooming, because people need to cut stuff when they want to cut it, and you can just get access to all kinds of branches. So little tip, find your florist or arborist. Plus then if they've got a chipper, all the chips you need for your farm, which I cannot say enough, like get 3,000 piles of chips, but I bet a lot of you probably already know that part. So just a dual thing if you're going to grow flowers. Anyway, so I just really am always surprised at how many different varieties do well, and I'm always learning. I don't spray anything, so I do have some pest problems. I'm trying to figure that out, but I feel like mostly I want to create a really good ecosystem that's able to grow flowers in a production style. So in a old pasture field that used to be wheat that's just been totally depleted. So it has its own challenges, but it's pretty interesting. I'm going to just jump into marketing. Does anybody have any questions so far about?
When's your first harvest for your early anemones with your season?
Well, the bulbs actually, the bulbs are my first harvest. And so I probably was starting to pull those. What is happening? Did I make this start going on its own? Maybe. I don't know. It might keep going. I don't know what's going on. But I probably start pulling bulbs in mid-April, I think, consistently. Again, I'm only going into my third year, so I'm as green as they come. So far, that's how it's been going. But then I was putting in my anemones and ranunculus probably in early March-ish for us, which is pretty dang good in that high tunnel. So I had those ready to go, and I was getting them in the ground, and so they followed really close after my bulbs did, and then sweet peas right on the heels of that. So I had at least something happening, which is always my panic. Yeah, like right now, this time of year, I just think, how am I going to pull this off again? Like, how did I do this? Anyway, so marketing. Oops.
That's good.
Okay. So I am in the position where I'm just trying. Whoops. This is why you don't put a farmer on the computer. But I pretty much have started with the CSA. I kept that model, and that was kind of how I got my first group of. I totally broke it.
You're fine.
That's how I got my first group of people to buy flowers from me.
One more.
And Yeah, it's just a little, it's
It's
got
just
a delay.
slow. It just had a delay.
So the CSA, which the bottom two pictures, I just do wrap bouquets, and people sign up for a monthly, a bi-weekly, or weekly. I haven't had anyone do that yet, which, because the flowers last so long, it would be ridiculous unless you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna buy flowers every single week for myself. So, or maybe a business, it could work really well, or, you know, a situation where they could plow through that many flowers. So, and plus I think, oh my God, I hope nobody takes a weekly one, because that's a lot. It'd be just like a lot of things for me to remember at this point. So I have there's a local cider, Liberty Cider in town, and that's my drop-off location. So I toot my horn in this situation, because every 2 weeks I get to go and relax and have hard cider when everyone comes and picks up their flowers. So it's a really good relationship. Plus they have a space in the back where I can do workshops and stuff. Yes?
My concern is always transport of the flowers.
Oh.
So what do you give people, like, at your pickup?
Yeah.
Buckets?
I do.
But they don't take those, so what do they carry?
You know, I ended up getting this is so horrible. I ended up, when I did my vegetable CSA, the people who had the little CSA before, I just had those green plastic bags on the, you know, that you put your radishes in, or like vegetables, people just grab those little plastic bags. So I have this roll of them that I have been continuing to use. But so in the beginning, because I'm disorganized, is really the only reason that's happening. I try to have mason jars available, and people will eventually start getting, like, I've got a couple people that have their own vases, so they'll bring their vases ready to go, and then we just put the flowers in them. Transporting them back in a car in a mason jar or a vase is really tricky, and so I'm trying to figure out, like, I've seen really cute patterns for bags, like to make a flower bouquet bag that's out of something that's not, that can hold water, so that it's something reusable. I'm just trying to figure out, like, how can I do something where I'm not using these dumb plastic bags, or ask people to bring the plastic bags back so I don't feel so bad, but it's still the same thing, you know? So anyway, so excellent question. So at this point, I have newspaper, I get it wet, I wrap them, and send them off unless they have a jar or a vase that we exchange. And then I bring everything in black buckets. So, and I probably had almost 20 people this year, which is that's pretty good. I started with about 13, and so it bumped up just a little bit this year. I sell edible flowers. I've got some bakeries in town that will buy flowers in bulk sometimes, and then people for weddings or events. I do DIY brides, so they can pick up buckets for their weddings if they're doing their flowers themselves. And I did pick up a couple weddings. I did one last year, and then I had 4 this year. So I did a few weddings, and then I've done some workshops, which I really actually enjoy quite a bit. And so I'm kind of hoping to have more workshops available next year. And then primarily I'm using Instagram. I hate Facebook. I kicked it for my person a long time ago, and right when I kicked it, they bought Instagram. I was like, come on. So now, if it weren't for, and then my only marketing humans in the world are like, you need a Facebook for your business. So I got the Facebook, and if it weren't for Instagram just automatically posting to it, I probably would never do anything on it. So my website's kind of crappy. I need to redo that, but it has enough. People can purchase their CSA on it, and I have just enough to get by right now is kind of where it is. And so I am fully aware of that, and I'm trying to look at how I can market better. For me, I really love having relationships with other farmers, and I really love having relationships with the excellent bakers in town and the incredible cider makers, like all of these additional perks that I can enjoy. So I'm trying to figure out how I can work with people more this next season. But second season, I did a farmer's market the first season, and the second season I didn't do farmer's market because I wanted to reach out to my florist community a lot more. And so it worked. I got kind of hooked in. I had a florist right at the end of my first year, and then kind of got hooked into this other group of florists. So I had about 3 florists that purchased pretty dang consistently from me, and could purchase more for flower growers in our area that I mean, they just use so many flowers that, and that's just 3 of the bigger florists in our area. So I know there's more, and that's been really fun. And so we ended up, Snap, help.
I'm coming.
Okay. So in my last slide, you will see the beautiful faces of some of those florists and other growers. I have not only vegetable farmer mentors, but other flower growers in the area who've been doing dahlias and other flowers for about 10 to 15 years in Spokane area. So the 2 gals over here, Nikki is Tall Grass on the top, and Terry is Dream Dirt Farms on the bottom. And both are excellent dahlia growers. You can get great tubers from Nikki. She's also a sunflower goddess. And then the florists on the top here are 2 that I work with a lot. Esther is the person up north where we just ended up, everyone was going there at 9:30 because this gal was bringing a van load of flowers from Bonner's Ferry. It was like Christmas every single time she shows up because they sell so many flowers. So we would all meet there, and we had a florist, flower grower meeting just last week, and we're just trying to figure out, like, it feels like we have some momentum and something going, and then we're trying to figure out how do we maybe open up a wholesale market available to our florists that we can invite more growers into. So I think I better stop there because it's like 15 more minutes.
You're doing great.
Yeah.
And what I think is neat about what Beth is doing kind of next is it plays off of both the convenience piece and knowing your customer. So she knows these florists are already craving a centralized space where they can get a wide variety of local seasonal flowers. And so creating that space for them is creating convenience, and she's being able to tap directly into her customers' needs there. So thanks, Beth.
Yeah.
We have some really exciting things to expect from you. I'm gonna bring up Debra Prinzing now. Deborah's been one of our fabulous advisors since the beginning of this project and was around for these wonderful focus groups, and she's gonna talk about kind of forecasting industry trends and what that may mean for different marketing efforts you want to consider for your business.
Thanks. And I'm just going to press this right arrow to move forward. Yep.
Yes, that is what you're.
Yep.
That is
great.
what you're gonna do.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm
Good
with you on the
question.
technology.
Yeah.
This is great. Thank you so much, Katie and Beth. It's just really inspiring to be with these passionate advocates. Well, I feel like we're fellow sisters in this journey, but we're brothers and sisters in this journey. I started SlowFlowers about 8 years ago after coining the phrase as a way to explain to people what I was writing about as a home and garden journalist. I was excited about the flower farmers that I was meeting here in the Pacific Northwest, actually up and down the coast. I just briefly will tell you that I had a book that I wanted to call 52 Weeks of Local Flowers, and that I was working on. It was basically a blog project that became a book. And my publisher at the time said that 52 Weeks of Local Flowers sounds like a 1980s self-help book. That's a horrible title. And of course, that's why he's the publisher. And I said, well, I don't know. I've been using this phrase, slow flowers. What do you think? It's kind of a play on slow food. And he said, his name is Paul Kelly, he said, bingo, that's a book title. So that's where SlowFlowers came from. And SlowFlowers has morphed from a book to a weekly podcast to an online directory of flower farmers and florists across North America. We have over 700 members. I'm so happy that Snapdragon Flower Farm is part of that. And we also have, I produce a lot of content, online magazine, print magazine. American Flowers Week is a campaign that happens the week of July 4th. That is a free social media campaign that generated over 5 million impressions last year when we invited farmers and florists to basically post photos of their flowers, preferably red, white, and blue flowers, and but that's kind of corny, and use the hashtag. And so for 5 years, I've produced an annual forecast, which I call the SlowFlowers Floral Insights and Industry Forecast. I've got this aversion to the word trend. I prefer to use the word cultural shift instead of trend, or a phrase rather, because in general, trends, as we all know, have this implication that they're short-term, maybe flash in a pan, kind of a fad. And I truly believe all of us in this room are part of a cultural shift to changing how consumers interact with flowers. And those focus groups are kind of the tip of the iceberg of just showing what level of awareness there is. We have a long ways to go. So my 2019 forecast has 10 items. I'm going to publish that in January. You can hear it on the podcast. I've got all my material up here for you to come help yourself to. But I thought I'd pull out four of the items that I thought particularly related to flower farming. And I'm really encouraged because, I mean, like Beth, you get like gold star because you're pretty much on this trajectory already in starting year 3. And I think several other people I've chatted with in the room are also on that trajectory. But I look at ways that people interact with flowers. I think our job is to help consumers connect with nature. Just sitting in those focus groups with the team from Washington State Department of Agriculture and the Washington Farm Bureau, I realize I definitely live in a bubble. I think about flowers all the time. I write about flowers. I talk to people about flowers, and it's sort of a shock to the system to realize that not everyone thinks like that, right? Like that's my political party, flowers. So I base the forecast on a number of things, and I'll just mention these to give you a little sense of what this involves. If this is not statistical research, this is based on first-person interviews and primary research. I probably conduct over 100 interviews a year with flower farmers for everything from the newsletter for Johnny's Seeds, and I'm so glad that we've got Johnny's here, for Florist Review Magazine, for Super Floral Magazine, for my podcast, and for all kinds of other sort of publications that I've convinced that flower farming is a good article to write about. And also going to major industry events with leading floral designers and meeting vendors who are on the other side of this equation. Like we would be nothing without connecting with the floral industry because they're our ultimate consumers. And then farm tours and studio visits and plugging into national research on gardening and lifestyle because I'm active in the garden writers movement as well, or association. So these are the ones that I wanted to highlight, and I've got a slide to illustrate each one of these. So I'll just go through these quickly, and then we'll go on to the visuals. And please jump in with questions or comments if something relates to what you're thinking about. I think that the grocery store conundrum is, as I alluded to earlier, grocery stores are the dominant channel for selling flowers, no denying it. So the tension is that they're selling conveniences, and we can change the conversation around flowers if we can present experiences versus over conveniences. So even at the grocery store level, there's conversation around this. I just met with all the floral department managers for town and country markets in Puget Sound earlier this week, and they are thinking about having demonstrations on how to decorate the basic green wreath that they're going to sell at Christmas. They're trying to figure out how to do a demo to show their shoppers how to take gleanings from their garden to decorate that base wreath. So they're trying to look at how to make this more experiential and not just a convenience transaction. So that's one. The other one I really love is artisan, not mass produced. And this is really moving us into fashion and art. I think the best thing that happened to flowers this year was Beyonce with flowers on her head on the cover of Vogue magazine for September. Seriously changed, and there's a lot of look-alike photo shoots. In fact, that same month, British Vogue had Rihanna on the cover with flowers on her head. So how can we treat flowers as a value added, as an artisan ingredient, not as a commodity? That's something that I think we all can do, and I'm really excited about. Especially small growers have that unique opportunity to be more couture in what they're doing. The other, this not that, is environmental, not synthetic. This is really driven home to me when a farmer in Western Washington, Jello Mold Farm in Mount Vernon, had an overproduction of sweet pea starts last winter. They had way too many to grow in their greenhouse, or in their high tunnels. So Diane Stucavati from Jello Mold brought about 10 flats of 2-inch pots, with each pot had one little sweet pea start in it, brought to the wholesale market where florists come by from the farmers. And she's like, well, I don't know, I'll just put $2 a pot on this and maybe people will buy them. They were gobbled up in one day. These florists all want to be flower farmers. They all want to figure out how they can grow something, even though they don't really have the land or the time. There's a fascination with that farmer florist lifestyle. And so I feel like whenever you can push the environmental, your connection with nature, if you want to sell tubers, if you want to sell bulbs, if you want to sell starts to consumers, you're not going to be cutting off your own channel of business. I just think whenever you can pull the veil back, pull the big curtain back like the Wizard of Oz and show what's behind it, people will connect. And then the fourth one is vertical, not silo or compartmentalize. This is that cross-promotion community that we're seeing happen, and Beth alluded to, by having these partnerships with a bakery or a hard cider distillery. When we can find similar ways to cross-promote or well, there's two things going on. One is to be your own producer and to sell to yourself. And I'm seeing a lot of farmers create retail channels where they're selling through their own retail channel, be it a pop-up or some kind of store within a store, or even opening their own retail. I've documented that for 2 years, that flower farmers are starting to open their own retail flower shops. Similarly, florists are trying to grow and sell to themselves. And then there's that opportunity of partnering with another channel of business. So here's just a couple slides that talk about experiences. These are from my Garden Overflow It. This is a mother-daughter farmer florist farm in Patterson, Washington. Have you been there?
Well, they came to the Farm and Food Expo last.
Oh, I heard about that from Katie. So Teresa and Katie have, they're in an area where there are a lot of destination weddings in the wine country. They're growing flowers, they're designing flowers for weddings, but they've also turned their property into, the farm, into a festival destination. So they have a fall festival and a spring festival. And these are photos from their fall festival in October, where not only are they selling flowers, but they're creating all these community-based experiences that in a way, it's like 1 + 1 = 3, because other vendors are coming to sell, and in other agriculture vendors, like people doing honey and people doing food and people doing craft items, as well as the pumpkin patch and that sort of thing. So those happenings, those events are experiences, and yes, flowers are sold at them. So I think that's pretty exciting, and I'm dying to go to that one of their festivals. I haven't quite gotten to that yet. I talked a little bit about artisan, and there's sort of two things going on. One is that when flowers are treated as jewelry or fashion or art, that's the value added. The wreath on the top here is a series made by Carly Jenkins from Killing Frost Farm in Missoula, Montana. Very similar growing climate to here. She has permits to forage from the state Department of Natural Resources, where she's going in and getting mosses and lichens and creating these amazing wreaths at the holidays, all from foraged material. They're based on Game of Thrones, and they are a unique shape. And people are going crazy over these and pre-ordering them, and she's gotten a national following of people asking her to ship them to her, because she's found a way to turn basically all the stuff from the forest floor into a desirable product. The piece on the right is from a workshop taught on Whidbey Island, called the Whidbey Flower Workshop. It happens every April, and Susan McCleary, who is the leading floral designer in the US and abroad, who has created the succulent jewelry craze, she taught this workshop, and she taught designers and farmer florists and farmers who attended how to create floral tattoos. So this piece that's on the shoulder of the model is actually on double-sided like athletic adhesive, like the runners put on their legs to keep their muscles from spazzing out or something. And you attach the flowers on one side, decorate it beautifully, and then peel off the adhesive and put it on the body as a wearable accessory, basically. And then I also think that curating is an overused word. I'm kind of sick of it. Could someone please tell me another way to say curate without curate? I don't know what it is. But the idea of collections is really a way for you to differentiate yourself. And Katie and Beth both alluded to this, like, yes, we all want a little bit of everything, but when we can differentiate ourselves and specialize, then it becomes a way for people to seek us out. These mums in the bottom were all grown by Carly Cavalier of a farm called Cairn Farm. She's in Western Washington. She's worked for a number of farms involved in the Seattle Wholesale Growers Market, now has her own farm. Her goal was to really grow a rainbow of heirloom mums, and mums are so hot right now because guess what? They last for 2 weeks, and they last a lot longer than dahlias. So they're kind of the big deal right now in having a comeback. So that collection idea of making sure you're offering a full spectrum of one, going deep into one category is sort of exciting. How much more time do I have? About 5 more minutes? Okay, the environmental, not a synthetic. I'm excited about, and I told you the story about the Jello Mold Farm bringing the sweet pea starts to sell to florists, kind of on an off chance that people might want to buy them, and guess what? People are asking for them this year. They're kind of regretting that they ever did it because now it's like one more thing. But showing how plants are grown, showing the kind of the raw, the ugly, the dirty part is okay. The installation on the left was designed at one of the Field to Vase dinners that is a project of the Certified American Grown program. This was in a greenhouse that Sun Valley Growers in Arcata, California, but the designer, who's a SlowFlowers member, her name is Faye Krause, and she's the daughter of organic vegetable farmers, so she has a particular understanding for her business, which is called Flora Botanica. She decided to create a chandelier out of curly willow, and then she hung tulips with the bulbs and root from that curly willow matrix to create a chandelier. And it was so fascinating to see people who were at this dinner who really just are used to buying a bunch of cellophane wrapped tulips at the grocery store, spend so much time looking at this piece, taking photos of it, talking with her, talking with the growers, expressing fascination with how big the bulbs were, how dirty the roots were, how long the stems were. And yeah, I was a little worried about my meal getting a little bit of dirt on it, but it was a beautiful installation. I love that. And then the other two photos on the right were created for American Flowers Week by a young flower farmer florist named Isabella Thorndike Church. She's the daughter of Joan Thorndike, who was the first certified organic flower grower in the state of Oregon, as far as I understand, Lamera Gardens down in Ashland. And now she's the second generation. And Isabella wanted to paint a picture with everlastings or flowers that were fresh but would eventually dry. And this is the logo of their farm. And she created it by pushing thousands of stems through literally a section of chain link fence that was hanging at a farm store in Medford. And what I particularly love is the photo on the right where you can actually see all the stems coming through. And people spent more time going around the back and photographing those stems and marveling at literally the thousands of stems of flowers that painted this picture. But it was a piece of art that the community came and visited and talked about. And yes, they probably went home with bouquets, or they went home with vegetables, because this was a food and flower stand. But there was a reason for them to come in during July 4th when a lot of people don't buy flowers. So I loved that idea. The vertical idea is really, as I alluded to earlier, farmers selling to themselves. The two photos on the left are from Flying Bear Farm. Flying Bear Farm is in Langley on Whidbey Island. And Melissa Brown, the gal with the bouquet, was growing a lot of flowers with her family. It's her parents and she and her husband. And so it's a four people, 2 generations, growing cut flowers to sell to florists on the island. Well, Whidbey Island has a lot of visitors, a lot of tourists, and a lot of destination weddings. And so she had a built-in audience, but she wanted something more regular than the Saturday weddings to sell to, and she actually bit the bullet and bought and leased a little storefront in downtown Langley. And the middle photo here shows the cash counter where she's able to sell her flowers at retail, along with like small artisan local gifts like note cards and small pottery and jewelry and that sort of thing. But the store has basically become her selling studio for her wedding and event business. So she's not only growing and designing, but she's also at retail. She's selling her flowers to herself, basically. The 2 images on the right, I just had to laugh when you talked about hard cider. These are from one of SlowFlowers, and everyone featured in this are members of SlowFlowers. They see that as a networking and and branding platform. These are from Peninsula Taproom in Sequim, and April Limley is a flower farmer. Her partner owns Peninsula Taproom, and as it turned out, a lot of times she would bring her extra flowers to the taproom, and the dudes that were there would, yes, buy flowers to take home. You know, it happens. The space next to the tap room became available in this small complex. They took out the lease to that. It's just about 300 or 400 square feet. They bumped an opening between the two sort of bays, and now the side room is where April has pop-up mom and daughter or couples or family workshops. She'll have girls' night out, and people will come and have a brew and a bouquet. And she doesn't have to be there and be tethered to retail hours, because it's sort of become a cash and carry as well, where she's got bouquets in, and often she will have them in mason jars, but her latest thing is, you know, the growlers that everybody gets their beer in? She's having them cut off and sanded and turned into vases with the branding from Peninsula Taproom. So it's very well tied in and kind of a cool cross promotion. Captured a whole new clientele that didn't know flowers were grown locally, and you know, in a demographic of people who are getting married, so they're finding her. So just briefly, those are 4 of the items that I've highlighted for 2019. If you want to grab my material I have up here, you can certainly find it. I'm going to release it the whole report on January 2nd in my podcast, so that's and free for everyone to download. And I just wanted to touch on what SlowFlowers means in the industry. And, you know, I wrote a manifesto. No one told me that I couldn't do that. So I decided the Slow Food International has a manifesto. So this is inspired by that. But this is all based on the people that I've gotten to know and what's important to them. So really, SlowFlowers asks people to respect the seasons. This is geared obviously to florists especially, who we would like to see buy flowers in season and buy them locally. The second bullet point is to reduce the transportation footprint of the flowers consumed in the marketplace by sourcing as locally as possible. The third is to support flower farmers, small and large, by crediting them when possible. This is one of my pet peeves, is when florists post beautiful arrangements and don't identify the farmer. You're nodding. Has that happened to you?
But, you know, it happens less and less.
Yes.
I think that a lot of florists are appreciating that they get business by kind of.
I appreciate you saying that you're seeing it happen less and less. I think there was this resistance among florists to tag the farmer because they didn't want to reveal their sources or have someone else do an end run, like a consumer buy direct from the farmer instead of through the florist. But I believe we aren't going to change things unless we're identifying who the farmer is. And so I do sneaky things in Seattle, especially where I will see a florist post a bouquet, and I'll know who grew that, because I just saw it at the growers market. And I will go on Instagram and go, oh, it's so great that you have Crowley House dahlias. I'm sure they hate me, but like, it's, you know, I'm trying to be truth here, right? Tell the truth. But the fourth one is to encourage sustainable and organic practices, and the fifth is to eliminate waste, and especially the use of chemical products in the floral industry, which in floristry, it is not a green industry, I'll tell you that. SlowFlowers is, as I said, just a platform, and what is so exciting is it's sort of gone far beyond my first idea of naming a book, to the point where in the last 365 days, there have been 52 million impressions on social media of the hashtag SlowFlowers. This is beyond any little idea. It's just been fabulous. It's just seeped through the industry to the point where the mainstream floral industry is referring to SlowFlowers as the sustainable category. And I think that is really our next frontier, is to convert the mainstream conventional floristry to accepting that this is legit, and that buying from farmers and supporting farmers is how we're all going to benefit. So I think that's it. And it's your turn now to jump up. Thanks.
Well, I want to express my extreme gratitude and thanks to both Beth and Deborah for being great contributors to this work we're doing. There's some materials up here in the front. If you want to stay engaged in this project and tap into some of the marketing efforts we hope to do in the next
couple of months, please grab my card, grab a handout. Also, big thanks to the Farm Bureau. David's around. We're both at the trade show, and you can speak with these lovely women after a session or at lunch.
Sorry we went too
Thank you.
long.
I know,
Yeah,
we really-
thanks for bearing with us with the technology as well.
Thank you. Don't forget to hashtag your flowers, SlowFlowers. It really is a big deal.